high in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, on a river whose clear, cold water trickles from the peaks, a quiet revolution in beer was brewing. Fort Collins, once under the longest-standing citywide dry law in the country, not lifting prohibition until 1969, would become something very different. As home brewers tinkered in basements and the public's thirst for something new grew, Fort Collins found its moment. By November 1989, Cooper Smith's Pub opened as the city's first local brew pub, followed just weeks later by Odell Brewing, the first to package and distribute beers beyond the taproom. 2 years later, New Belgium Brewing arrived, destined to become one of the nation's most influential craft breweries. These pioneers, alongside the community and a pristine water source from the Cache La Poudre River, set the stage for Fort Collins' transformation into the Mecca of breweries. Today, when you walk the streets of northern Colorado, the hiss of taps and the clink of glasses echo generations of innovation, environment, and community. This is where the wild frontier of beer became a craft destination. Welcome to the story of beer in northern Colorado.
I think, if you're talking about Fort Collins and you're introducing it to someone else, you're probably mentioning beer. I mean, we're a big beer town. If you look at the number of barrels produced in Fort Collins, it's pretty staggering. When Doug and Corky Odell started the brewery in '89, the story is Corky was living here in Fort Collins and Doug and Wynn were in Washington State trying to figure out where they should open a brewery, and the Pacific Northwest in their minds at that time was saturated with breweries. So they decided to come to Fort Collins and opened just down the block in 1989, all draft, little 15-barrel system. And Doug was delivering kegs out of his pickup truck. All the beer at that time, all the major producers were basically making the same light beer for as cheap as they could and leaning into marketing, right? The idea of Doug at the time was to introduce more flavor into the beer scene. So that's really where it started, and a local producer producing flavorful, balanced, delicious beer like people hadn't really had before.
Started out as this cool thing. I remember, me and my buddies riding our bikes in Fort Collins to all the breweries. We'd ride our bikes to Odell and then New Belgium, and then there was another one, HC Burger, that then turned into Fort Collins Brewery. So it kind of was just like this cool niche thing. Like it felt like it was just Colorado doing it, but you kind of heard about these other breweries, starting to do it. There were some other breweries, obviously, Oregon, California. And then it just got real kind of, excitement just kept building in northern Colorado and building. And so when we, like I said, about 2010, it was just very exciting. And so when we opened in 2013, it was, kind of the height of what you would call the nano brewery movement. So super small breweries. We opened with a 3-barrel system, and that was kind of a very new concept, meaning that we weren't going to be tied to any kind of style. We're just going to roll through a bunch of stuff and see what people liked. And, New Belgium Odell had paved the way for us to do something weird.
A lot of people didn't really realize that beer could taste this way, or that we had this many flavor options, or we could do particular things during the process to make beer taste this way. And it's very unique, right? Every craft brewery is a little bit different. My recipes are my recipes, but I could give them to any brewery around town and they would brew a little bit different beer. It wouldn't taste the way that I brew it. And that's a really unique part of brewing.
But I think the ethos of beer, craft beer, is that it's an approachable product that's meant to be shared in community. Like I don't think there's anything more communal than beer, and all of my favorite experiences are all tied to times with friends and family. So all the brands that I remember as like, this is my favorite beer, I always think back and it's a great beer. It's also about that experience. It's about that shared kind of community. And I think what I keep coming back to, why craft beer in particular is so distinct, is that it can kind of appeal to almost anyone. I think people that just say I don't like beer, you probably just haven't found the right one.
As a Fort Collins local, it's been really cool to see how the industry has grown up here in town, how it's changed over time. And, it's given me perspective on what the community needs, what we can do in the community. We're not just a bar at all, really. We're a community gathering place, and beer really brings people together.